Have Palestinians consistently rejected Israeli peace offers? To find out, let's examine key historical events and diplomatic efforts over the course of nearly 100 years. Layer 1. The origins of the conflict go back to the end of the 19th century. At the time, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire, where, on the lands of Palestine, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived peacefully together. The pivotal moment came in 1917, when British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour issued a commitment to establish a national homeland for Jews in Palestine, seeking support from Zionist movement for Britain's efforts in World War I. However, this pledge is viewed critically due to the fact that, at the time, Palestine was still under Ottoman rule, and over 90% of its population consisted of Palestinian Arabs, with Jews representing about 8%. To fulfill this promise, the encouragement of Jewish immigration from Europe to Palestine became a priority, capitalizing on the discrimination and racism faced by Jews in certain European countries. Layer 2. By 1947, due to British policies encouraging Jewish immigration and settlement in Palestine in the interwar period, the Jewish population in Palestine had risen to 32%. That year, as Britain decided to withdraw from Palestine, the United Nations adopted Resolution 181 in November 1947, proposing the Partition Plan for Palestine. This resolution aimed to divide Palestine into two states, one Arab and one Jewish. The Palestinians deemed the Partition Plan unfair, as it allocated 56% of the land to the Jewish state, despite Jews constituting only a third of the population and residing in closed communities covering just 7% of Palestine. On the opposite side, the Zionist movement leaders were concerned that Palestinian Arabs accounted for approximately 45% of the envisioned Jewish state's population, which made them a big minority and meant that this would be a demographic challenge and a worrisome threat to the intended Jewish state. Consequently, a policy of ethnic cleansing unfolded to establish a Jewish majority and ensure the viability of their state. This historical reality is substantiated by numerous Israeli historians, revealing that prior to any Arab intervention or the outbreak of the 1948 war, Zionist militias had already displaced approximately 200,000 Palestinians and razed their villages. Layer 3. In 1948, after the British withdrawal and the accompanying ethnic cleansing, a war erupted between Arab states and the Zionist movement. By the war's end, the State of Israel was declared, asserting control over 78% of Palestine, a significant increase from the 56% stipulated in the partition decision. This expansion was achieved through the destruction of 531 Palestinian villages and towns, leading to the displacement of over 750,000 Palestinians, constituting half of the Palestinian population, who became refugees as a consequence. The renowned Israeli historian Ilan Pappé authored a book titled The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, in which he quoted David Ben-Gurion, the first Israeli prime minister, stating, "I am for compulsory transfer. I do not see anything immoral in it." During the conflict, the United Nations dispatched Count Bernadotte, a Swedish envoy, who brokered a truce and recommended the return of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees. However, the Zionist group Stern, considered to be a terrorist group by the British authorities, opposed his suggestions and assassinated him in September 1948. Despite this, the United Nations passed Resolution 194 at the end of 1948, urging the return of Palestinian refugees. Israel, however, refused to implement the resolution, preventing their return. Layer 4. In 1967, Israel waged a war that resulted in the occupation of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and Sinai. Despite UN Resolution 242 urging Israel to withdraw from these territories, the implementation was rejected by Israel. This rejection is grounded, in part, on the belief that Palestinians have no rightful claim to the ancestral lands in the West Bank and Jerusalem for both national and religious reasons. Israel's stance is shaped by a historical perspective that reaches back around 3,000 years, asserting the presence of ancient biblical Jewish kingdoms in Palestine, which included the West Bank and Jerusalem in their territorial domains. Since the era of President Jimmy Carter, the United States has made persistent efforts to persuade Israel to withdraw and facilitate the establishment of a Palestinian state in the occupied territories. Regrettably, these attempts have consistently encountered Israeli stiff resistance. Layer 5. On the Palestinian side, a consistent emphasis has been placed on embracing the two-state solution. The Oslo Accords of 1993, endorsed by both Palestinians and Israelis, were designed to pave the way for the establishment of a Palestinian state. However, Israel later distanced itself from this commitment, and Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli prime minister who had signed the agreement, fell victim to assassination by extremists. And it's noteworthy that the current Israeli prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who once led the Israeli opposition during that period, played a pivotal role in organizing widespread protests against Rabin. Netanyahu accused Rabin of entering into a peace agreement with the Palestinians without securing the consent of the Israeli people. After that, the Palestinians and Arabs maintained their adherence to the two-state solution. In 2002, Crown Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia proposed the Arab Peace Initiative, gaining unanimous Arab League support for the two-state solution. Israeli leaders, however, have consistently refused to discuss the initiative. In May 2012, the EU Council expressed deep concern about developments on the ground which threatened to make a two-state solution impossible. This included the rapid acceleration of Israeli settlement construction and the demolition of Palestinian homes. In March 2015, Netanyahu declared that a Palestinian state would not be established during his administration. Then, he delivered a speech at the United Nations last September. During his speech, he showed a map of Greater Israel that includes all of the territories of Palestine, including the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Despite the unwavering support for the two-state solution from the Palestinian side, including acceptance by even radical factions like Hamas in 2017, Israel remains resistant to the idea. Top figures from Israel, like Giora Eiland, a former Israeli security advisor, have expressed this stance, stating, "The cake is small and cannot be divided into two." Now, having unraveled the layers of history and conflict, we stand at a crossroads. The enduring struggle of the Palestinian people under successive Israeli administrations, marked by control and rejected peace, casts a long shadow. Today's war brings unprecedented suffering in Gaza, spotlighting the urgent question: will this cycle of violence and oppression lead us toward peace or perpetuate global turmoil?